welcome back to Wrestling Flash. In this WWE and all things wrestling video we are going to look at The Rock's demands for Roman Reigns, the best and worst of SmackDown. WWE has allegedly chosen the new Brock Lesnar, WWE doing intergender tag matches, and more. First, let's look at the best and worst of SmackDown. Welcome to this week's edition of the best and worst of SmackDown. It wasn't the strongest episode this week, but an improvement from last week's show. Overall, things need to pick up on the blue brand, but the seeds have been planted for what should be an entertaining month of programming. Here were the ups and downs of SmackDown this week. Number 3. Best, Madcap Moss on SmackDown. Madcap Moss was the first to declare his intention of participating in the 2022 Money in the Bank ladder match. However, before he reaches the Allegiant Stadium, there needed to be something for him to stay relevant, and WWE decided to continue his feud with Happy Corbin. Corbin is great at making himself as hateable as possible, and that's exactly what happened when he assaulted Moss to the point that the ladder had to be stretchered out of SmackDown. While fans might groan at the idea of repeating this feud, it wasn't a bad decision. It could help get Moss even more over before he inevitably becomes the first participant in the men's Money in the Bank ladder match this year. Number 2. Worst, nothing in store for Roman Reigns. Is Roman Reigns now playing a cheerleader? Following the reports that the tribal chief would take 10 weeks off between June and August, the focus has shifted away from him and more towards unifying the tag team titles. The tag team titles will likely be unified next week as the match between RK Bro and the Usos was made official. But it's clear that WWE has no plans for Reigns at Hell in a Cell, and he is likely to miss the show altogether. Number 2. Best, the right decision was made in the WWE Women's Tag Team title match. Sasha Banks and Naomi retained the WWE Women's Tag Team titles against Natalya and Shayna Baszler. It wasn't a classic or even that memorable of a match, but it was the right outcome after Banks lost to Baszler last week. It proved that WWE is serious about keeping the titles on Banks and Naomi, and it will be interesting to see who is next for. At this stage, they need to go to NXT as well to defend the titles. Perhaps Boss and Glow versus Toxic Attraction. Number 1. Worst, a sluggish pace to the show. While we will admit that this wasn't the weakest episode of SmackDown, overall, the show isn't doing as well as Raw despite having a world champion present. The Red brand has consistently delivered since WrestleMania, pushing the right superstars as well. We're not sure if it's just fresh faces that are needed, but WWE seems to not be able to avoid a sluggish-paced episode of SmackDown lately. This week was no exception. Number 1. Best, the SmackDown Women's title match. Ronda Rousey is on a path of redemption. Given the nature of fans and how quickly opinions can change, all it's going to take is a few consistently good matches for the perception of her to change. While fans have understandably been underwhelmed looking at her run between February and April, her I Quit match against Charlotte Flair was the best way to end the feud, as they had what was arguably the match of the night at WrestleMania Backlash. This week on SmackDown, she had a fresh new challenger in Raquel Rodriguez, who she had another great match with, stealing the show yet again. If this is how Rousey's title reign will be, there is a lot to be excited about. WWE legend highly praises Sami Zayn. Former WWE superstar Hurricane Helms heaped praise on Sami Zayn for being the most versatile talent on the roster in WWE. Sami Zayn is currently trying to get on Roman Reigns' good side as the former Intercontinental Champion defeated Shinsuke Nakamura last week on SmackDown. He did a personal favor to the tribal chief as he heard Nakamura talk about the bloodline behind their backs. Hurricane Helms has been known for tenure with the company since early 2000s. Donning green hair, a black face mask and a cape, Helms captivated fans with his superhero persona. The former tag team champion announced in March this year that he had signed a Legends contract with WWE. Following his bout with Riddle on the latest edition of SmackDown, Helms took to Twitter to express his thoughts on Zayn's creativity. That Sami Zayn is probably the most versatile performer going right now. A conspiracy theorist briefly feuded with Drew McIntyre following his loss at WrestleMania 38 against Johnny Knoxville. While he would find a way to escape the Scottish Warrior, Sami Zayn found himself in a steel cage match with McIntyre on a previous edition of SmackDown. The 37-year-old superstar does not seem to have caught a break since his loss on the Show of Shows. Sami Zayn was mocked at a live event in Leipzig, Germany. Following the main event, Zayn was attacked by superstars like Nakamura, Ricochet, Sasha Banks, Naomi, and Riddle with their signature moves. Post the assault, the superstars went on to click a photograph with a passed-out Zayn in the center of the ring. Additionally, this week on SmackDown, the former NXT champion was unsuccessful in his match against Riddle wherein he cited that if he won, the tag team unification match would not occur. He recently tweeted that all he wanted was respect from WWE superstars and WWE Universe. Sami Zayn is hungry for respect, tweeted the former Intercontinental Champion. WWE doing intergender tag matches. Rhea Ripley recently described her real-life relationship with Damian Priest. The two WWE stars are currently a part of the Judgment Day faction but were friends even before joining the group. During her interview with WKDQ-FM, The Eradicator stated that she and Priest have known each other for a while. She has also discussed the possibility of competing in intergender tag matches against the former WWE United States champion. Ripley also recalled the time she lost her gear at a WWE live event but was able to borrow the Archer of Infamy's pants, which fit her perfect. She said, "Yeah, Damien and I, we've been mates for a long time. We've talked about doing intergender tag matches. For the longest time, we're pretty much the same human. Our gear is very similar. The way that we look at life is pretty similar. We act the same. We have the same likes and dislikes. Hell, even when I lost my gear. Lucky he was on the show because I wore his pants out." During the same conversation, Rhea Ripley spoke about her WrestleMania 36 match with Charlotte Flair. The former stated how special it was for her to share the stage with the Queen. At the show, the former NXT Women's Champion lost her title to Flair. Ripley said, "The WrestleMania at the Performance Center against Charlotte for the NXT Women's Championship, it was so incredibly special. It was my first ever WrestleMania match and it was the first time an NXT championship had been defended on WrestleMania. So it holds such a place in my heart and it was a history-making match." At WrestleMania Backlash, Ripley joined the Judgment Day faction and aligned herself with Edge and Damian Priest. The faction is currently feuding against AJ Styles and Finn Balor. WWE chose the new Brock Lesnar. Brock Lesnar is a once-in-a-lifetime athlete. Not only is he a superb in-ring competitor but also one of the biggest names in the company today. However, it looks like the company has selected who they want to fill his spot in the company. It is none other than the tribal chief Roman Reigns. One of the things that made Lesnar special was his limited schedule. By not appearing throughout the year, his appearances had even more of an impact. Even though the Beast Incarnate only worked a few matches every year, they became special attractions just because his name was associated with them. As per Dave Meltzer of the Wrestling Observer newsletter, the company is trying to build Roman Reigns as the next Brock Lesnar. The tribal chief is getting similar treatment to the Beast Incarnate in his storylines as well as his contract. It seems the idea now is to try and make Reigns into a new Lesnar, a guy who beats everyone and is portrayed at a level of his own, while he only works limited dates, said Meltzer. Meltzer also noted that Reigns would not be featured on any major shows going forward. He was pulled from the upcoming Hell in a Cell event as well. The WWE Universal Champion is in a position where he can continue to hold the titles despite working fewer dates. We do know that Reigns will be on some PPV shows over the next few months, that he will not be on all PPV shows going forward, that he will be doing SmackDown shows to build up the PPVs he is on, similar to what Brock Lesnar or Bill Goldberg would do, and supposedly his name will be back in the advertising for the shows he will do, said Meltzer. Roman Reigns defeated Brock Lesnar at WrestleMania 38 to unify the WWE and Universal Championship. The match concluded their long-standing rivalry in the promotion. Considering the recent developments in Reigns' contract, it could be considered a passing of the torch moment. The Rock's major demands for Roman Reigns. WWE legend The Rock may want to face Roman Reigns if the tribal chief is to win the match, as per Jim Cornette. The rumored main event of next year's WrestleMania show is the first time ever WWE match between The Rock and Roman Reigns. The People's Champ hasn't featured since 2019, when he made an appearance on SmackDown. On Jim Cornette's drive-thru show, Cornette stated that The Rock would only agree to a match with Reigns if the creative had the head of the table win the match. He feels that Vince McMahon may want The Rock to win the match, which could be his final one in WWE. Well, if the belt ain't on the line, I was going to say, because Roman obviously needs to win the thing, but will they do that or will they? If they get The Rock, even if The Rock says Roman needs to win, will they send the fans home without seeing The Rock win on his last match ever? Probably, asked Cornette. Cornette continued, one of these sharp writers or manipulators could probably sell anybody, even Roman Reigns, on that as making some kind of sense, but Rock would know it was bullshit from the start, and I can't see The Rock agreeing to do the match unless Roman goes over, because Rock doesn't need it. But Roman would hurt. Nothing's going to hurt The Rock, but it would hurt Roman, so I can't see Rock doing it unless Roman wins, and I honestly can't see Vince doing the match unless Rock wins, said Cornette. The Rock's last match in WWE came at WrestleMania 32 in 2016, when he faced Eric Rowan. It's no secret that a match between The Rock and Reigns is in the works and could possibly headline WrestleMania 39, which will take place in Hollywood. It was even teased on The Rock's TV show Young Rock, where young Reigns asks to face the People's Champ, with the latter replying that a match between the two can only happen at the biggest stage of them all, WrestleMania. Reigns is the unified world champion and the longest reigning Universal Champion in the title's history, having held the title for over 600 days.